Bright sunbeams filled the spacious, luxurious room. In the middle of the enormous space, a man and a woman sat at the dining table. Leah smiled kindly after His Majesty called out to her. As it turned out, he was concerned about why she no longer asked about his well-being. As soon as she replied, he immediately suspected her of not being interested. Leah smiled and reminded him that her most cherished wish was for his good health. Only after these words could he smile contentedly and temper his ardor. Leah involuntarily recalled how much effort she had put in to see that smile. She mentally rejoiced that the day had come when everything could be ended. The girl gathered her thoughts and said that she wanted to tell him something. He clearly had no idea that she would suddenly suggest they get a divorce. She wanted to say that he no longer needed her, but his knife struck the plate. He was so shocked by her words that wrinkles even appeared on his face. Leah gently stroked his head and said that it was time for her to find her own life. She picked up the contract and reminded him that their marriage was political. Besides, she remembered that he hadn't liked her father for a long time. The man squeezed the paper in his hand with such force that it was about to burst. In the end, he had no choice but to agree. He suggested they talk about it again during afternoon tea. The man smiled as if nothing had happened and suggested they continue their meal. Leah was ready to breathe a sigh of relief, unaware of his insidious plans. That same day after lunch, she saw blood gushing from his mouth. This made her worry, as she feared his condition would worsen. No sooner had she stood up than his body slowly flew to the side. As soon as he fell to the floor, the girl immediately jumped up in fright. Leah unexpectedly discovered something that seemed extremely strange to her. She continued to carefully examine His Majesty's pale face. The girl tried to rouse his body and asked if he was all right. After a short pause, the healer suggested that he had taken some kind of poison. This seemed strange to the healer, as the man had always been extremely careful. His Majesty unexpectedly smiled and told Leah that he was in pain. This led her to think that he had intentionally drunk this poison. This sad story began 2 years ago when she found herself in the body of Leah Celeste. According to the novel's plot, she indulged in luxury and pleasure daily. At some point, she was poisoned without any apparent reason or suspects. As a result of her death, the emperor went mad and took his own life. This was strange, as theirs was a marriage of convenience and they didn't love each other. The girl was so outraged that she left many angry comments. She went to bed, not even suspecting that she would end up in the body of that very empress. She somehow propped herself up on her elbows, not fully realizing what had happened to her. As soon as she saw her reflection, she thought that God had played a trick on her. She immediately started to worry, as she didn't want to die from poison. The girl wanted to drink water, but her glass contained unpleasant-tasting beer. She disliked the taste so much that she spat all over the surrounding area. Lee unhappily wiped the saliva from her mouth and asked the maid to repeat what she had said. The girl trembled and said that she couldn't behead the new maid for this. It seemed she herself had already forgotten that her character was fond of alcohol. Lee told her not to do that and demanded that no more alcohol be poured for her. The maid accidentally let slip that she would change her schedule, which immediately made her think. It seemed to her that she was acting suspiciously, which made her change her behavior. She abruptly stated that the first thing she would do was visit her personal harem. After these words, Lee went to her room to get ready. Her husband was the main character, Xian Bermut, who was considered a tyrant. After Leah's death, according to the story, he went mad and died at the age of 28. The girl recalled that in the book, their deaths occurred within a short interval. She remembered that she was now 21 years old and he was a full 26. Leah was scared by the fact that she only had a few years left to live. She sharply turned to Lauren and repeated that they were going to the palace. After these words, they left the mansion and walked towards the carriage. The maids immediately began discussing that she was going there again. The girl wasn't surprised that they were discussing her empty treasury. The novel stated that Leah distributed astronomical sums as pocket money to her favorites. She even gave expensive rings to beauty pageant winners, putting them on their toes. Now she was ashamed of the reputation she had acquired. She hoped that her chances of survival were higher because she was an empress. Leah thought they might try to slowly poison her to lower suspicions. As soon as she thought of the emperor, it seemed strange to her that he hadn't mentioned her harem. Lauren quietly asked her if she should prepare a special brew. Leah was instantly indignant, as she had only recently said that she was quitting drinking. Lauren reminded her that she had promised to prepare drinks for the battle and spend the first night with the winner. The girl immediately protested, demanding that everything be canceled as soon as possible. She roughly understood how difficult it would be to mend her fallen soul. A few minutes later, a whole crowd of hand-picked handsome men appeared before her. They immediately began to compete for the Empress's attention to stand out. The guys almost fought for the title of favorite of their generous mistress. Leah thoughtfully watched the fight between two guys unfolding before her. Before, she couldn't even imagine what a mess reigned in this place. At some point, a crowd of young guys stopped and saw that she was there. She got angry for the first time and declared that every single one of them was fired. The young lovers thought they could temper her fervor and began to flatter her naively. Lee just grinned predatorily and pointed her finger at the front door. They trembled in surprise, hearing the order to pack their things and leave. They all started crying at once, begging her not to do this to them. They fell at her feet, repeating that they would have nowhere to go and would not survive the separation. Lee tried to endure this stream of whining and turned to the guards for help. One of the guys asked how she could steal a man's heart and just walk away. With each passing second, the girl realized more and more that this wouldn't do. She started scolding them and said that one of the guy's hips were too curvy. Leah continued to harshly criticize each of those who had previously been her favorites. She didn't know how long she had been saying all this, but soon there was no one left in the hall. The maid thought something was bothering her, but Leah's eyes glowed with happiness. Lauren assumed the Empress might not have liked the evening, but her behavior was sudden. She asked them to ignore the minister's words about the harem. At one point, the maid even offered to bring a more handsome man. The guard quickly picked up on this idea and promised to compile a list of the most handsome men. Leah was shocked that she was considered a real libertine. She tried to refuse, but the guard abruptly undressed and suggested that it was about him. At some point, it seemed to her that everything happening was an incomprehensible movie. She tried to stop them, but every word she said was misunderstood. At some point, she screamed that she didn't need anything and ordered them to get out. After these words, the Empress immediately went to her room. She was glad that she could finally send everyone away and lie down to rest. The girl tiredly turned on her side and thought that she was paying for the actions of her heroine. Her maid unexpectedly asked what to do with those who remained in the harem. Leah suddenly jumped out of bed and ordered them to be kicked out tomorrow. Lauren suggested relaxing with an aromatherapy massage and dinner, but Leah refused. Imagine her surprise when she heard that she needed to prepare for her wedding night. She winced and tried to say that she had alcohol-induced amnesia. The Empress tried to hint that she should be reminded of that night. She awkwardly turned away and asked if she absolutely had to be there tonight. Lauren reminded her that Duke Celeste insisted on a monthly wedding night. The Duke was known throughout the world as a master swordsman and an excellent diplomat. She couldn't believe that her father was regulating the number of nights her husband spent with her. Leah tried to search her memories, but couldn't recall anything. It involuntarily seemed to her that she had encountered a part that wasn't in the original. She didn't want to put up with it, believing that she should have her own life. The Empress was extremely disappointed with the situation she found herself in. She turned to Lauren with a question about what she should prepare for today. The girl again cited a hangover and asked what she usually does. Lauren said that she needed to calm her mind and find inner peace. She reminded him that the Emperor loved silence and became rude when he heard shouting. She squeezed the Empress's hands and asked her not to shout so that he would be calm. An hour of long preparations later, the Empress finally came to her husband's room. All this time, she did nothing but ponder his strange tastes. She held her breath and prepared to walk straight into the lion's den. Once inside, she thought the bedroom looked cozier than she had expected. Lauren bowed respectfully and announced that they were leaving the room. Leah tried to stop them, begging them not to leave her alone in such a place. As soon as the front door closed, the girl wearily collapsed onto the floor. She kept thinking about what exactly made her scream. Besides that, it bothered her that she remembered nothing about her father. Leah decided she should just try to fall asleep as early as possible. The girl tossed and turned in bed for a long time before she could fall asleep. No sooner had she drifted off to sleep than a man appeared behind her. She was ready for almost anything, but he simply lay down next to her in bed. She decided she should just pretend to be asleep. It seemed strange to her that the room was suspiciously quiet. She involuntarily thought that things weren't as bad as she had imagined. Leah carefully observed his back, which seemed peaceful to her. She enjoyed looking at his black, damp hair. She even entertained the thought that she was much more beautiful than all the men in the harem. It seemed strange to her that he was covering his ears, as if noise bothered him. Leah hypothesized that he might have obsessive-compulsive disorder. She had heard before that he had been through many wars. She just wanted to remove his hand, but he instantly pinned her to the bed. His gaze remained hidden behind long, coal-black bangs. The emperor got angry and declared that she was being too loud. Leah immediately remembered that she had encountered such a reaction before. She squeezed his hand sharply and asked if he suffered from migraines. Leah didn't know that something had happened in the basement while she was in the harem. The empress was engrossed in her quarrels with young men. Hidden in the castle was a secret room, packed with instruments of torture. Inside was a bound man, destined for punishment. This enemy's scream seemed to the emperor something repulsive and painfully familiar. As soon as the enemy screamed again, a sharp pain pierced his head. He pulled the lever, after which the man chained to the chair fell silent. Sion Bermuth felt like a betrayed child once again. One day he picked up a bird, but he was ordered not to associate with such insignificant creatures. He was always told that he should know neither joy, nor sorrow, nor pleasure. His father insisted that he remember the prophecy and strive for the best for the sake of the empire. All these years, Sean Bermuth grew up with the idea that he shouldn't get attached to trifles. He was convinced that attachment was the greatest obstacle. He thought that there would be no pain in his life if he got rid of attachment. After many years, he finally ascended to the throne in place of his father. He was like a weapon aimed at destroying enemies. He was told repeatedly that this was the only way to save the empire. Soon, war became an unbearable irritant for him after many years of self-restraint. He tried to adapt, but hallucinations increasingly took over his mind. On this day, the Duke asked if he was going to stop the torture. This man was Leia Celeste's father. The Emperor thoughtfully looked away and confirmed his assumption. Cromwell Celeste reminded him that many enemies still remained captive. He insisted on continuing the torture to root out the rebellion. The Duke suddenly remembered that today was the night he was to spend with Leia. The man said that he should finish everything and go up to the room. Initially, it was the Duke who insisted on marrying his daughter, which Sion did not pay much attention to. He often thought that he would have refused to marry, knowing that she was so noisy. One day he entered the room and quite frightened the Empress with his appearance. As soon as she screamed, he again remembered everything he had seen at the front. At the mere thought of it, his head was ready to burst from pain. He punched the shelf with all his might, causing it to crack. The man pierced the girl with his gaze and ordered her to be silent. That night, Leah was so scared that she couldn't stop crying. As soon as he remembered that incident, he hoped Leah would be quiet. The Duke calmly closed his eyes and agreed with his hopes. The Emperor thought she would welcome death, since even her own father had abandoned her. That evening, he had no idea that one of her questions would catch him off guard. No one before had ever even come close to asking if he suffered from headaches. He only got angrier and ordered her to shut her mouth quickly. Sion thought she would cry, but she just calmly asked him to lie down. She practically forced him into bed and reminded him that he was very tired. The Empress carefully covered him with a blanket and promised to tell him a story. In the end, Sion got confused and just lay down in bed, as she wanted. After that, Leah lay down next to him and told him about the guy who was her first love. She said that she broke up with him because he was always flirting with other girls. All Leah did was list absurd situations that happened with her boyfriends. Sion didn't understand why he felt tired instead of his usual headache. He felt himself wanting to sleep more and more, while she continued to chatter non-stop. It seemed surprising to him that he was listening to stories about all her men. Leah unexpectedly smiled proudly and said that she was done with those men. He always thought she was mired in alcohol and men, but her words convinced him otherwise. Xian concluded that she wasn't so naive after all, since she had sorted everything out herself. The Empress saw that he was falling asleep and wished him good night. Thanks to the Empress's help, he was able to sleep until morning. He was surprised that his head was clear and not throbbing with pain, as it had been before. He turned and saw that Leah was still peacefully snoring beside him. The man felt the warmth of her hand on his chest and noted that this morning was very quiet. He had thought everything would be different, considering her talkativeness, but he was wrong. Xian carefully moved her hand before getting out of bed. He thoughtfully gazed at her sleeping face and mentally called her his wife. He was surprised that she didn't annoy him, and he even managed to get some sleep. Before, no medicine had helped with his headaches and insomnia. He couldn't understand what she had done, considering how well he had fallen asleep. Xian pushed those thoughts away and decided that the absence of a headache was good news. Before, he had barely managed meetings and ministers and had entrusted all affairs to the Duke. He decided to take this opportunity to deal with all the documents. Besides that, he continued to think from that very night about who else remained in the harem. After some time, Leah woke up peacefully in bed after her husband. She was glad that she had a good night's sleep and felt great. Besides that, she liked that she was able to put Xian to sleep so quickly. Leah greeted the maid and decided to clarify her schedule. Lauren reminded her that she and the Duke had a tea party planned. Leah didn't like that this happened after each of her wedding nights. She didn't want to keep listening to these tedious remarks. The girl tried to feign illness so that the Duke wouldn't come. Lauren reminded her that she had always looked forward to this day. As it turned out, Leah used to say that this was the only day her father arrived first. Leah tried to shake off this sad mood and thought about her own things. She unexpectedly told Lauren that she just wanted to forget about it. The maid decided that the Duke would leave peacefully, knowing that everything had gone well. The girl smiled and said that she should visit her personal doctor today. After that, she demanded that a bath be prepared for her. Leah wanted to examine her body as soon as possible to anticipate the poisoning. Her healer said he would have run to her barefoot if she had asked. Leah involuntarily thought that she had chosen her doctor based on his appearance. She said she had something to ask, after which she was offered a seat. As soon as she was on the couch, he immediately sat down next to her. The Empress was bothered by how close he sat to her, smiling sweetly. She reminded him that he was sitting too close, even for an examination. He whispered right into her ear that this way she would hear his voice better. Leah immediately pulled away and said that now they should restrain themselves. She said that she had started to take an interest in her health and needed to get a checkup. Leah asked what condition her body was in now. She thought he would give her a detailed answer, but the healer just replied that he didn't know. He said, without undue emotion, that such things were unknown to him. The healer ran his fingers along her shoulder and said that he knew better how to control her body than she did. He repeated that he couldn't wait to meet the majestic Empress. The guy thought he could bribe her with his sweet words, but he was wrong. She seriously asked how such a dilettante had survived and ordered him to be taken away. The physician tried to prove that she had misunderstood him, but it was too late. That might have worked on the previous Empress, but certainly not on her. She inspected his office and realized that he had only been working with a broken stethoscope. Leah understood that with such a bad specialist, her chances of being poisoned were much higher. She learned from Lauren that he was the one she had chosen among all the candidates. Leah was ready to burn with shame because she had chosen him based solely on his looks. This guy was a graduate of the medical academy, but he was a terrible specialist. The Empress began tearing up his papers until she sensed something was wrong. She understood that such a foolish person couldn't just become a candidate out of nowhere. Now Leah was sure that this wasn't solely the doing of her past strange personality. The thought that someone had helped him get here wouldn't leave her mind. The situation was complicated by the fact that many knew about her passion for handsome men. Even that foolish doctor was a bribed, ordinary graduate. Leah continued to ponder the potential motives of her enemies. Given the efforts made, she understood that her poisoning would be the reward. She stomped on the paper and realized that her death had been much more planned. In addition, even the emperor himself might have been in poor health, as he was constantly in the basement. The emperor's personal physician had been bribed, which similarly threatened his health. Leah unhappily clenched her palm into a fist and decided that she had to stop this. She promised that both the emperor and she herself would survive. The girl excitedly turned to Lauren, saying that they were going to the emperor. She asked where he was and said she needed to check something. After that, the girl immediately headed to the emperor's study. As soon as she crossed the corridor, the guards immediately greeted her. She smiled sweetly and learned that the emperor was inside. Their eyes widened in surprise when she said she needed to pass. The guard lowered his head and said that the emperor did not receive anyone without an appointment. The empress tried to seduce them, saying she had an urgent matter. To her dismay, the guards remained unyielding. They were alarmed by her announcement that she would ask about everything herself. Leah waited for them to close their eyes and then darted to the door like lightning. After that, she burst into the office, catching everyone off guard. Following her was a whole crowd, consisting of knights and maids. The emperor immediately asked, displeased, what was happening here. Leah smiled joyfully and greeted His Majesty the Emperor. He reminded his wife that unscheduled visits were forbidden. The man sarcastically asked how important her question was, while anger was visible on his face. Leah caught him off guard with an unexpected question about whether he had breakfast. He was so surprised that he couldn't utter a word. The guards suddenly fell to their knees and began to beg for forgiveness for this. Leah repeated again that he must have been hungry after work. She offered to eat with him, but he immediately ordered her to leave. The guards took advantage of her confusion and squeezed her hand, leading her to the door. They took her by the arms and carried her away, apologizing as they went. Lauren tried to ask if she was okay, but Leah wouldn't give in. She started knocking on his door and telling him he should eat well. She needed to strengthen her relationship with the emperor to know about his condition. Leah knew very well that no one would believe her if she said they would die. She decided that strengthening their relationship should start with meals. Her task was to ensure that the emperor was healthy in both body and spirit. Leah had to deal with how unyielding and stubborn he was. Before leaving, she asked Lauren to prepare cookies for the tea party. Several hours later, the emperor was finally able to take a break from work. He sighed tiredly and said that everything should go according to plan tomorrow. Xian walked forward until he saw Leah sitting on the floor. Everyone was extremely surprised that she was just sitting on the floor in a dress. The girl just smiled casually and offered to have dinner with him. Xian thought to himself how shameless this woman was. He was curious to see how long her audacity would last. In the end, he still agreed to go to the dining room with her. She noticed that he was adding tangerines to his salad and decided to find out what dishes he liked. Leah did nothing but discuss a bunch of different unimportant details. She talked about dishes and the benefits of food until he was completely fed up with her. At some point, Xian put down his cutlery and spoke to her roughly. He frowned in displeasure and asked her what she wanted. Leah smiled and replied that she just wanted him to eat well. She explained that since he had slept well, he should eat well too. The Empress noticed that the food on his plate had not diminished. He became even angrier and asked if her reason was really so trivial. Leah did not react to his threat and said that he would not do that. The Emperor clenched his hand into a fist and asked why she was so sure of it. The girl calmly replied that she was alive and was here now. She noted that he would have harmed her last night if he had wanted to. Leah was confident in his favor, which is why she decided to invite him. In addition, she told him about her doctor's dismissal. Her request was to be treated by his personal physician. Xian remained meaningfully silent, and then said that she was worthy of being Celeste's daughter. He added that she was capable of strengthening her position and interest in politics. Xian asked if she was ready to use any means to achieve her goals. The girl immediately thought that he considered her as cunning as Cromwell's Celeste. She cleared her throat and said that it would simply be easier for her to take care of his health. Leah added that she was ready to help him deal with insomnia. The Emperor allowed her to, and then pushed back his chair and stood up. The girl immediately brightened and said she would ask the doctor for advice. Sion immediately replied that there was no need for that, and her methods aroused suspicion. He threatened her with death if she tried to manipulate him with her tricks. Leah tried to calm him down and said that he surely wanted to get some sleep tonight. She assured him that she really just wanted to help him. The girl asked him to come to her room if he wanted to fall sound asleep again. She never got an answer from him as the door closed right in front of her nose. As soon as he left, she immediately collapsed onto the floor from the tension. She exhaled tiredly and wondered if she had managed. Now her thoughts were occupied with developing a strategy to protect against poisoning. She understood perfectly well that the Emperor was not inclined to cooperate. Leah was sure that it would be difficult for him to forget that deep, sound sleep. The thought that she would make him return brought her extraordinary joy. From that day on, she began to come to the Emperor's study every day. On one such day, she again asked him if he had had breakfast. Leah resembled a little dog that constantly followed its master. Contrary to all her expectations, he kept ordering her to leave. He nervously adjusted his hair and ordered her to be thrown out of the office. Sometimes he would lose his temper and break his pen, but he never agreed. Leah was annoyed by his intransigence, which could cost them their lives. The maids were discussing how she had become a true stalker of the Emperor. The Empress was annoyed by how poorly she was being treated. She involuntarily wondered if a whole week had passed since that incident. She understood that the moment would soon come when everything would reach its limit. That same night, she calmly brushed her hair, preparing for bed. Imagine her surprise when she heard the door to her room open. As soon as she looked up, she saw His Majesty's thoughtful face. It was hard for her to understand what was on his mind, as he remained silent. After a long pause, he finally asked her to put him to bed. Leah immediately and joyfully agreed, a bright sparkle appearing in her eyes. After that, the door to the room closed, and they went to sleep. The next morning, he was finally able to start his work duties. After some time, he was informed of Leah's arrival. He immediately stood up and told them to await his return. They froze in place, their hearts pounding, and continued to watch him leave. As soon as he left, they began to complain that she had been coming for the 4th day in a row. All these days, he agreed to have breakfast with his wife. Leah smiled joyfully, seeing her strict but handsome husband. At the table, she decided to find out how his morning had gone. She started chatting about how she had read a book and walked in the garden among the flowers. All this time, the Emperor ate calmly, listening to her chatter. Leah saw that he still kept his distance and did not engage in dialogue. She decided to make contact and asked him to pass her the ground pepper. He calmly reached out and handed the girl the jar. Leah smiled and said that this food would be much tastier now. She thought they had made a step forward and then noticed him leaving. The girl smiled and wished him a good evening. After that, she continued her meal, pleased with the interaction. Her maid surprisingly asked how she had managed all of this. Before, he wouldn't take a single step without their joint meetings, but now he was with her every day. Leah put down her cup, thinking about how to explain such behavior to her. She involuntarily wondered if this could be called taming. The Empress joyfully responded to his every request to put him to sleep. She saw a strange hidden charm in him coming to her bed. On one such night, she told him the story of one of her servants. She was flattered by the thought that now he couldn't sleep without her at all. She accidentally suggested that he enjoyed their night together. The Empress shamelessly said that she put in a lot of effort for him every night. It was as if she didn't realize her words could be misinterpreted. Her maid expressed hope that the Duke would be pleased with their close relationship. Leah put her cup aside and said that she needed to finish her business. After that, she left, leaving behind a lasting impression. The Empress went to a private office and summoned a specialist. Before her stood the utterly helpless Dr. Merton. She said she hadn't been able to sleep once due to the pain after seeing him. Leah was outraged that he continued to treat her like a liar. She gave him a hard look and asked how he was going to humiliate her this time. The girl pretended to be sick and knew that Merton's diagnosis was correct. He kept repeating that she was perfectly healthy, but she rejected that fact. She deliberately tested his principles to be sure he couldn't be bribed. Leah pressured him for 2 whole weeks and was about to conduct a test. She demanded the correct diagnosis and threatened that his life would depend on the answer. She pressured the poor physician, demanding he lie about her being ill. Merton did not give in to fear and said it was a pretense. She ominously declared again that he was not considering the Empress's honor. The Empress went so far as to point a sword at him. She said he had one last chance before she counted to 3. Merton was so scared at the sight of the sword that he even started to stutter. Soon he cried out that his honor as a doctor would not allow him to lie. After that, he fell silent meaningfully, lowering his head. He promised that he would do everything possible to make her life comfortable. Leah unexpectedly smiled and praised him, saying that this was what she had been waiting for. She added that she could confidently entrust him with the care of her health. The girl sat down next to the healer and said that she was counting on his help. Thanks to this, she was finally able to relax and attend to other matters. She was still trying to expel her former favorites from the palace. It seemed they had adopted her mannerisms and were behaving like true troublemakers. She decided that she should respond in kind and show them what a real scandal was. Leia rushed into the harem and declared that she would deal with them if they didn't leave. Imagine her surprise when she saw only one person. He kept repeating that he condemned the imperial family for false promises and betrayal. Lauren said that in the past, she had brought him in, calling him a man with sexual intelligence. He was shouting that she had promised to pay for his academy tuition. Lindo Carcel was against leaving without getting his share. At that moment, the Empress realized she had messed with the wrong person. She had to change her anger to humility and listen to his story. Leia immediately appreciated that he wasn't pressing her with physiological demands. She instantly understood everything when she saw the enormous tuition fee. As it turned out, one semester of study costs more than 100 million won. She threw away the paper and repeated that he could enroll in the academy himself. He immediately replied that registration takes place once every 4 years. After another argument, Leah was convinced that it was a real disaster. She said she would find another option and arrange for his enrollment. Lindo took the paper in his hands and said that only the Imperial Academy was suitable for him. This was due to the fact that the special pharmacology course was not offered in other academies. As soon as he started talking about it, a new thought flashed through her mind. She asked if he could create not only antidotes, but also medicines. Leah was thrilled at the thought that heaven had sent her such a needed person. Lindo clarified that there is very low demand for this specialty, which is why it is rarely found anywhere. At that moment, Leah was no longer thinking about the exorbitant cost of tuition. She smiled and promised that she would invest her own funds in it. After that, she returned home and prepared for bed with her husband. Most of all, she loved drinking hot tea on a rainy day. She told the Duke about it so he would fall asleep faster. The Emperor still couldn't understand how she managed to lull him to sleep. He even began to doubt his own willpower, as he always fell asleep next to her. Besides this, there was something else that truly stunned her. He was extremely annoyed at all the meetings because of the number of issues that had piled up. They pressed down on him like a huge snowball, from which there was no escape. One day, he realized that amidst all this cacophony, her voice was his salvation. It immediately enveloped him like an angelic whisper and banished the darkness. That's why he realized he wasn't angry with the Empress at all. During breakfast together, Leah asked why he was always so quiet. He couldn't admit that he wanted to hear her voice a little longer. Sean wanted to ask about the harem concubines, but he couldn't allow himself such a question. As soon as he started thinking about it, these thoughts caught him off guard. He wearily rubbed his forehead, realizing that because of her, he couldn't focus on work. Sean increasingly thought about asking her directly about her plan. He found it suspicious that she had suddenly taken an interest in him. It was for this very reason that he arrived at the Empress's palace. Lauren became worried and said that Leah had immediately gone to the harem. Because of this information, he immediately thought he had been tricked. He was upset that she cared for him so much, and then went back to other men. He imagined her smiling slyly and looking into his eyes. Sean began to think that she was just like her greedy father. The man once again wanted to return to the idea that people around him were just a hindrance. After that, he announced that he was returning and ordered that day to be erased from memory. Meanwhile, Lee actively tried to negotiate with Lindo. She stated that for the next 2 years, he would work as her personal pharmacist. Lee promised that she would pay for his education if he managed to complete this term. She knew he could be bribed too, but he was different from the others. The girl doubted that anyone could invent a new approach. Besides, she was attracted by Lindo's pure gaze and his egoism. There was no intrusiveness in his gaze, only a passion for knowledge. Lindo agreed to her proposal and asked what medicine he needed to prepare. Imagine his surprise when the Empress declared that she needed poison. She added that he would have to research poisons. After a short pause, he tried to find out what it would be used for. Her explanation that she just wanted to create an antidote calmed him down. She promised that she would ensure his safety during the research. As soon as she signed, he agreed and removed his bandage. In addition, he threatened her with the press if she did not fulfill her part of the agreement. She agreed and demanded that he not look at other offers. The guy smiled, folded the document, and promised to serve her faithfully. After that, he brought a whiteboard and began to explain the future plan of action in detail. He explained that she needed to develop resistance to poisons, as an antidote might not help. Lindo attributed this to the fact that the body must withstand such a load. He promised to examine her condition and prescribe minimal doses of poison. Lindo suggested growing poisonous plants himself to avoid suspicion. She wearily noted that they would have to hire a couple more loyal servants. Lindo suggested taking her former harem members into service. The Empress liked this idea, as there were only 3 of them. The young man was extremely surprised that she had become more economical and thoughtful. Leah got angry and suggested saving money on his academy tuition. Lindo immediately started apologizing and flattering to show that he understood everything. The Empress joyfully raised her cup to their successful cooperation. The next day, Emperor Xian once again broke another quill. He was so angry that he could barely control himself. His servants were afraid to make a sound, as he had already broken more than 10 pens. After some time, Leah returned and, as if nothing had happened, called them for breakfast. The servants took this as a good sign, as they thought they were saved. One of them fearfully noted that Xian had become irritable again. They both noticed that his condition became stranger when he was with Leah. It seemed to them that the relationship between them had somehow changed. After that, they unanimously hoped that the emperor would return to his old self. Xian didn't want to agree to breakfast, but he still got up out of habit. He didn't want to appear awkward if he were to sit back down on the chair. Ultimately, the emperor followed Leah out several times. It was beginning to seem to him that he was enchanted, as he would wake up in her bed. The thought that all of this had become so normal for him terrified him. He increasingly suspected her of having pulled some trick. All these days, Leah tried to understand the reason why his behavior had changed. They had returned to the time when he wouldn't speak to her. Despite this, he made sure she ate and got enough sleep. Leah exhaled and decided that she shouldn't jump to conclusions. She guessed that it was extremely difficult for him to express his feelings in words. It was for this reason that she had to come to terms with making the first move. She decided to find out why he looked upset. Xian immediately and calmly replied that this was not the case at all. Leah didn't believe it and said that he was constantly burning a hole through her with his gaze. She theatrically wiped away a tear and said that at this rate, she would become scared. Xian mentally condemned her words, thinking that she was sitting too boldly across from him. After that, she decided to ask if he was angry with her. Leah asked him to relax if he really wasn't angry. For some reason, her voice sounded so gentle that his heart beat faster. He immediately tried to get rid of that feeling and told her not to pay attention. All this time, he was analyzing her words, thinking that she was playing with him. Looking at her sad face, he involuntarily wondered if she could indeed be sincere. He considered for the first time that she might have tried to drive everyone out of the harem. As soon as he came to this brilliant conclusion, he was finally able to breathe out. Leah smiled and said that she felt better seeing his relief. She said it so casually that he couldn't help but smile. He involuntarily thought that he was starting to see the obvious as his mind cleared. Xian wondered if Duke Celeste didn't want him to be sane. He understood that Leah taking care of her husband was definitely not part of his plans. Because of his thoughts, Xian decided to give the maid a new assignment. He wanted to know if she had any theories regarding the Empress's behavior. Her maid replied that Leah had always been known for her changeable nature. Lauren's words sounded as if caring for him was just a hobby for Leah. Sion asked to make sure she wouldn't even think about being interested in the harem. Lauren reported that Leah had started growing plants and had involved the former concubines in this. Sion was angered by the news that they were still in the Empress's palace. Meanwhile, they were indeed working hard in the large greenhouse. Their opinions were divided, but they still decided to come to terms with their new lot. They understood how long and hard they would have to search for new jobs. Previously, they had ended up in the harem for money, but now they were happy with honest labor. They unanimously concluded that the Empress had changed and become kinder. They also wanted to discuss Lindo's case, but they were interrupted by a sudden rumble. This frightened them so much that they clung to each other and screamed. Imagine their surprise when the Emperor himself appeared before them. Sion remained meaningfully silent, and then said he would ask them one question. He carefully surveyed everyone with a heavy gaze and asked which of them had served the Empress. They recalled that the Empress had strictly forbidden them from speaking about the past. First and foremost, they feared that she would punish them for disobedience. Sion drew his sword and threatened them with decapitation. He ordered them to tell him everything the Empress had told them, without holding anything back. They continued to sit with their heads bowed, while the Emperor loomed over them. One of the guys was frantically trying to figure out how they could get out of this situation. He shouted that the Empress had ordered them to work for the food they had been receiving for free. The guy explained that they had been living off their looks for too long. Xian fell silent thoughtfully, and then asked if they knew about the Empress's sleeping habits. They stated in turn that she frowned, swore, and yawned. All the guys were so consumed by fear that they missed one important detail. They were always around Leah, but never truly fulfilled her desires. Not one of them ever ended up in her bed, as she suddenly rejected them all. The concubine saw her getting drunk, but she always went into the bedroom alone. Xian immediately understood that they were all lying, and none of them were fulfilling her whims. After that answer, he hid his sword and ordered them to continue with their business. They answered his question about the Empress's whereabouts and breathed a sigh of relief. Xian intended to have a serious talk, but he witnessed a scene. She was talking to some man about something bad that was going to happen to her. Xian looked at his face and concluded that he was from the harem. What alarmed him was that he seemed closer to the Empress. He had an epiphany when they started discussing what clothes she should wear. Xian could no longer bear it and instantly burst into the office. Without further ado, he pressed his sword to his throat. The Emperor pierced the young man with a heavy gaze and ordered him to state his allegiance. Lindo calmly lowered his head and introduced himself, adding that he was subordinate to the Empress. Xian ordered him to answer how he ended up in the imperial palace without being announced. Leah immediately intervened, saying that she had the right to select staff herself. Xian was outraged to the limit, hearing the same sweet and soft intonation. He suggested that she might be hiding this man to harm her husband's safety. The man asked a question and found out that she was holding aromatic massage oil. She tried to lie that she wanted to give him a massage, although in reality, she was holding poison. Lee added that Lindo was studying to be a pharmacist, which is why she left him. She dramatically suggested that he had misunderstood everything again. Xian exhaled tiredly, threw the vial into Lindo's hands, and said he could find another pharmacist. After that, he again put the sword to his throat and pierced him with his gaze. The servants exchanged glances, thinking that the last few days had been too peaceful. They expected the Empress to start screaming, but she remained calm. She didn't fall for her husband's manipulation and told him he could do whatever he wanted. She was even surprised that he still put away his sword and became calm. Leah decided to offer him tea leaves for relaxation, as he had a headache. She instantly persuaded him to go to the tea room. Besides, he no longer objected to Lindo and told her to do as she wished. Lindo saw the Empress's gaze and showed that he understood everything. She had to give up the idea of protecting Lindo so that Xian would spare him. After some time, Leah said that he should have reported his headache earlier. The girl instantly brewed tea and then offered it to Xian. All the servants held their breath, hoping it would improve his mood. Some even discussed that incident in the harem, when those guys almost lost their heads. They were surprised that the Emperor went to look for the Empress. The maids discussed different theories. thinking that the emperor might be jealous of them. They eagerly noted that there was much more intimacy between them. The girls liked to imagine what passions could reign between them. It was still difficult for them to accept the emperor's jealousy, which they themselves had invented. One of the girls asked her to stop reading cheap novels and make it up. Despite this, they were convinced that the emperor had fallen in love with the empress. The next day, Lee resumed cultivating poisonous crops. She ran her fingertips over the leaves and felt them tingle. At one point, Lee even thought that Lindo was trying to get revenge on her. He brought poison to begin the first stage of adaptation to poisons. She started thinking again about the time Cian unexpectedly burst into her office. Despite the difficulties, Lindo managed to become an official servant. Thinking about all this, Lee didn't even expect to run into her father. Duke Cromwell Celeste immediately pierced her with his heavy gaze. She found that her body began to speak without her effort or control. Cromwell Celeste asked the servants to leave and said they had an important conversation. As soon as Leah confirmed his words, they immediately bowed and left. The man said he was worried about her health after she broke her promise. Leah immediately remembered the very promise she had broken after their first wedding night. His tone suddenly changed when he asked if she remembered why he had made her empress. His voice was so venomous that the girl felt the ground give way beneath her feet. He reminded her that he had only asked her for one wedding night a month. It seemed he didn't like the fact that the emperor was staying overnight with her so often. Before, in return for that, he had turned a blind eye to her behavior. Now Leah understood that she had been forcibly married off for her father's purposes. She turned away, saying she would do nothing to jeopardize her status. The girl wanted to say goodbye, but he only asked if she thought he would start to love her. He called her a pathetic doll who couldn't even sit still. Thanks to this conversation, she was able to understand why her character's personality was so terrible. She wanted to make him shut up, but tears automatically flowed from her eyes. It seemed she could no longer maintain control and succumbed to Leia's true feelings. Cromwell held out the flask and said that his plans had been thwarted because the emperor had become functional. He ordered her to behave as before, namely, to drink and yell at Cian. Leah silently snatched the flask from his hands and emptied it in one gulp. After that, she felt her breathing begin to recover. It seemed he had concealed her illness and only used it as a means of subjugation. Before leaving, he repeated that she shouldn't act so boldly. Leah tried to stop him so he would at least leave some medicine. Cromwell squeezed her wrist and told her to bear a son if she wanted to get his attention. He wanted to scold her again, but unexpectedly began to cough and weaken. He caught Leah off guard by abruptly letting go of her hand, causing her to fall. She thought she was about to hit the ground, but Cian managed to save her. He gave the Duke a heavy look and hinted that he was lost. The man immediately collected himself and greeted the emperor. He demanded an explanation for why he was there. Cian defended his wife's honor and said that she was not his daughter, but the empress. Duke Cromwell immediately apologized for the mistake he had made. Leah happily thought that her care for Cian had finally paid off. She joyfully snuggled against his shoulder and thanked him for saving her. Imagine her surprise when he suddenly lifted her into his arms and ordered her not to move. After some time, the girl found herself changed and tucked into bed. The emperor carefully brought her a cup of tea and ordered her to drink it. She couldn't understand the reason for such a change and said that she was fine. He didn't explain what was happening at all and calmly lay down next to her. Leah still put up with it, as he was on her side today. Soon, Leah fell asleep. Despite it being broad daylight, the emperor watched her sleep and remembered her embarrassed expression. He didn't believe she was okay, as he saw vulnerability in her eyes. The man carefully watched her eyebrows twitch. He liked to think that this side of her was known only to him. In the morning, she decided to get a checkup because she didn't like her reaction to her father. First and foremost, she didn't want him to manipulate her weaknesses. As soon as she saw the results of the examination, she was even more surprised. Lindo was amazed that even after the blood test, there was no reaction. They couldn't understand what exactly could have made her suffer so much. He frantically went through different options until he arrived at a single one. Lindo stated that it looked very much like the consequences of alchemy. The girl's knowledge of science was limited to the fact that stone turns into gold. Lindo immediately listed everything that modern alchemy studies. He suggested that this was related to the magical side of alchemy. After that, he told her about ritual magic as an act of wish-making. He explained that for this, one should strongly desire, using a creature as an intermediary. This was the last option, as her symptoms could not be explained by medicine and pharmacology. Lindo said that one must keep a close eye on the intermediaries for magic. Besides, he doubted that the Duke would want to harm her. Leah couldn't trust him, but she was absolutely sure that she could be useful to him. She came to the conclusion that her father was using her as a medium for ritual magic. This could help explain her strange symptoms. Lindo agreed and insisted on finding out the essence of this ritual. Unfortunately, he couldn't perform a blood test to determine the composition of the medicine. He was noticeably angered by Leah accusing him of lacking knowledge. As soon as he started threatening her with the absence of an antidote, she immediately apologized. Leah tried to start flattering him, but he suggested she thank him financially. The girl grumbled discontentedly and handed him her necklace. After that, he gave her a universal antidote. The Empress doubted its reliability and asked him to take a sip. Lindo said that she would need to take this medicine regularly. As it turned out, its key ingredient was human hair. He clarified that he only used toxic substances from hair. They retained poisonous elements secreted by the body. Thus, he was able to preserve the properties of all the poisons he took. By this logic, they needed many hair samples from different people. Courtiers were not suitable for them, as their habitat was repetitive. He suggested using the hair of aristocrats who had undergone special training. Lindo said that she would be the one to collect the hair samples. He suggested collecting hair gradually, as her body was not yet ready. Leah was surprised that the poison retained an unusual sweetness. She looked at herself in the mirror, awaiting the appearance of side effects. The girl turned around and saw that Lindo was bleeding from the mouth. She immediately concluded that this was due to the antidote he had drunk. He tried to reassure her that it had no effect on her health. After these words, the Empress saw the same symptoms in herself as in him. She calmly stated that it looked as if she was indeed unwell. Leah wiped away the blood, understanding that she looked like she was terminally ill. Meanwhile, her father was actively observing the strange red beam. Some unknown force demanded that he provide a report. Duke Celeste promised to review the plan and speed up the process. The unknown mage said that Cromwell needed to give him what belonged to him. The Duke cautiously approached the magic orb and touched it with his hand. After this touch, they swapped bodies, and Duke Celeste no longer controlled his own body. The mage said he would have to intervene, as his patience was running out. The next morning, the Empress was in an extremely vulnerable position. No one came to her for an audience, which meant she couldn't collect hair. She barely managed to collect the courtier's hair, coming up with various excuses. Lindo was unhappy with the amount she had collected and wanted her to bring more. The girl was ready to strangle him, as she was already having a hard time collecting them. He suggested asking the Emperor for it, but the idea seemed absurd. At first, she didn't understand how it was possible, but decided not to overcomplicate things. She thought about asking him to create suitable conditions. During breakfast, she carefully tried to feed him vegetables. The man took the fork from her hand and calmly chewed the vegetable. She asked him, fawningly, if he liked balls. The Emperor calmly took the fork again and replied that he did not like them. His eyebrows furrowed in surprise when she offered to arrange a ball for him. She called it exciting and suggested celebrating their anniversary. He called it strange to suggest celebrating their anniversary after 3 months of marriage. Leah had a backup plan and asked if he liked bets. The Emperor asked in bewilderment what it was, after which she clapped her hands. After this movement, servants unexpectedly appeared with trays. Leah smiled joyfully and offered to make a drinking bet. She suggested playing a game where the person who gets drunk fulfills the other's wish. The girl believed she had stamina because she drank wine instead of water. Besides, she had never seen the Emperor with alcohol before. She was sure he was confused because he couldn't handle alcohol well. Lee tried to provoke him by saying he was insecure about himself and his body. She managed to influence the man as he immediately reached for the glass. The girl was ready to laugh with joy as he had fallen into her trap. She was sure that she would be able to show her endurance in all its glory. At that moment, she clearly didn't expect to lose heart after a couple of drinks. Unlike her, the emperor remained unperturbed. She was unhappy that he drank like a horse and didn't get drunk at all. Lee reached out her hand to him and asked if he wanted to sleep. Soon, she found her head spinning, and she stopped understanding the words. She tried to concentrate, mentally repeating that she couldn't give up. Lee asked him to forgive her one glass, as he had already had 5 glasses too many. She didn't understand what she was doing at all, and even started to press herself against him. The girl leaned into his ear and said that there was something she needed to confess. She wanted to tell him about something that concerned their night in the bedroom. He immediately covered her mouth with his hand and asked what she was going to say. Leah asked why he was reacting like that and wanted to talk about when they sleep together. She wanted to tell him what she felt looking at him when he was sleeping. The emperor was so surprised by her words that his eyes widened. The next morning, she woke up thinking about what she had done yesterday. She was trying to get over her hangover and remember exactly what had happened. Leah tried to recall step by step everything they had talked about yesterday. Sion tried to shut her up, but she kept sharing revelations. She laughed sharply and said that even in his sleep, he continued to frown. The girl so abruptly adopted a playful mood that he was disconcerted. He pressed his hand to his forehead in displeasure and called it strange that she found it amusing. The emperor waved his hand and ordered the servants to leave the room. He suddenly got angry and insisted that they finish the bottle. Sion grumbled that her lips were already red from drinking, and she still didn't want to sleep. Leah suddenly looked at him and asked why he called her that. The girl leaned against his shoulder and said that he should call her by her name. She smiled sweetly and said that she preferred to be called by her name. Her gaze was so alluring that the emperor's eyes widened. He instantly snatched the bottle from her hands and called her words nonsense. The empress once again tried to ask him to arrange a ball. She even threatened him that she would stop putting him to bed and treating him. At some point, she decided to move on to heavy artillery and get closer. She sat on his lap and began to beg him to fulfill her request. Leah herself didn't understand how quickly she went on the offensive. She tried to remember the continuation, but her memory abruptly cut off. The girl frantically replayed the same moment in her head, but it was all in vain. She even accidentally bumped into a maid because she suddenly jumped up from her seat. Leah said she was uncomfortable and offered to sit next to her and rest. She clarified that the girl's name was Sarah and noted that she had suffered quite a bit. Leah remarked that she often works nights and doesn't spare herself. The maid agreed and confessed that there was more work. Leah apologized and offered a jar that helps restore strength. She carefully examined the maid's face and offered to get ointment and a compress. The girl immediately thought that the empress was much kinder than she had imagined. Sarah received an incomprehensible chance to become a lady-in-waiting at the palace. Usually girls from noble families were hired for such positions. She understood that the situation had become extremely critical due to numerous dismissals. Sarah came to the palace, ready to endure anything for her family. She decided on such a step despite the Empress's terrifying reputation. Initially, she couldn't even imagine that she would be cared for so much. Leah decided to find out how she felt about someone suddenly becoming friendly. The girl immediately and enthusiastically replied that she really liked it. She wiped away her tears and admitted that she had a terrible opinion of her. She promised that they would definitely become her reliable support. Leah just wanted to know what happened yesterday, but she was misunderstood. She decided to rephrase the question and asked what she should do to get what she wanted. Sarah realized she was talking about a bet and suggested seeing it through. Leah liked this idea, as she believed life was about moving forward. She accidentally saw the emperor in the distance and decided to talk to him. The girl tried to start a conversation, but he immediately ran off in the other direction. She immediately remembered that yesterday he had asked if she behaved the same way with everyone. This memory only annoyed the Empress even more. She hoped she hadn't told him that they might die in 2 years. She knew he wouldn't believe it, and she couldn't be so foolish. Leah was worried that much worse rumors might start about her. The maids immediately reassured her, saying they definitely wouldn't have ignored it. Leah smiled and asked them to scold him on her behalf. She was unexpectedly told that this order might be misunderstood. An unknown lady asked her to withdraw her command. The girl explained that others might think she was involving the servants in bullying. The Empress looked closely at her face and realized it was Eloise. Cromwell Celeste had one younger brother named Louis. Leah's father inherited the title of Duke after his father's death. Louis himself received the title of Count Appenzeller and raised a daughter. Eloise's mother was considered a descendant of the vanished race of sirens. She gave birth to Eloise on the same day as Lee's mother, but passed away soon after. Thus, they were born on the same day and were as alike as sisters. They looked like twins, and both had also lost their mothers. Eloise admitted that she was very sorry that Leah was being spoken of so negatively. The girl calmly chuckled and said that she also thought it was too much. Eloise unexpectedly offered her help in this matter. She suggested publicly announcing that she would atone for her sins until the end. Leah explained that she had never instructed the bridesmaids to persecute others. She asked them to stand by her and help if new rumors emerged. She added that her idea would be perceived as an admission that she was a dark person. Eloise immediately trembled with fear, clearly not expecting her idea to fail. She immediately wiped away her tears and apologized for thinking badly. Leah was surprised that her cousin had burst into tears so easily. After that, Louis himself somehow appeared next to them. Louis Appenzeller immediately greeted his niece Leah. Leah always wondered how such different people could be brothers. The girl immediately thought that she was in an awkward situation. From the outside, one could conclude that she was bad for making her cousin cry. Louis assumed that Eloise had already caused her trouble. He said that Sarah had recently heard rumors about her, and it caused concern. He unexpectedly apologized for his daughter and said that she was just worried about her. Leah calmly replied that everything was fine and she was glad to meet him. The girl suspected that he might have ulterior motives, but his gaze was pure. She smiled kindly and said it was time for her to attend to her duties. They said their goodbyes, after which the girl watched her uncle and cousin leave. Leah watched how warmly he treated his daughter and felt a heaviness in her heart. She realized she envied Eloise for having such a warm father. The girl immediately reassured herself that she could boast about her Black Panther. Meanwhile, her Black Panther was actually hiding in his office. As soon as he finished work, he noticed something was wrong. He was confused by the massive lock and chain that had suddenly appeared on the door. The Empress twirled the key in her hand and ominously declared that she had been waiting for him. Cian clearly hadn't expected to become his own wife's prisoner. The Emperor tried to escape through the window, but she grabbed him by his pants. He flatly refused to admit that he had been avoiding her all day. Cian even tried to lie that he was opening the window, but they were immediately hit by a gust of wind. Leah smoothly grabbed his hand and offered him a drink together. He took the glasses away and said that she definitely shouldn't drink after yesterday. Cian decided to clarify up to what point she remembered yesterday's events. Leah smiled and said that he had promised to think about holding a ball. He suddenly said that she remembered the ball perfectly, but had forgotten his name. The man looked away and reminded her how she had asked to be called by her name. Leah immediately remembered and told him to call her by her name. Cian abruptly moved closer and demanded that she say his name first. Leah blushed in embarrassment, but still complied with his demand. She caught his gaze on her face and asked why he didn't like the idea of a ball. The man sighed heavily and said that he didn't have good memories of it. After that, a flood of unpleasant memories immediately washed over him. Leah noticed how his expression had changed. She asked him to tell her what happened, thinking she could help. Cian immediately replied that she had already seen it during the coronation. As soon as she blamed amnesia due to alcoholism, he reprimanded her. He tried to avoid her beautiful gaze and told her to take care of her health. After that, he poured wine into a glass and prepared to begin his story. He shared that he was raised not to show emotions. His father made him a beast, fit only for war and hunting. The coronation ball seemed as noisy to him as ever. These dressed-up, dancing aristocrats and luxury were alien to him. Fathers repeatedly introduced their daughters to him, but he didn't care. Soon, he felt that the sharp sounds intensified his pain. He was about to leave, but the girl managed to grab his hand and try to hold him back. As soon as he felt the touch, an electric current shot through his body. He unconsciously tried to break free, but he used too much force. Because of this, the girl lost her balance and hit her head on the table. Her father immediately accused him of attempting to murder his child. the same question arose in his mind again. How could he have done such a thing? People began to repeat that they could die at the hands of such an emperor. They even believed that due to his long time on the battlefield, he couldn't live without blood. After this incident, he was definitively labeled a tyrant, and people started avoiding him. Leah tried to calm him with a light touch and said that she was there. She said that she would definitely help him understand what was happening around him. The girl pressed his palm to her face and called the coronation ball an accident. She promised to help him so that he would not suffer or make a mistake. Cian was so captivated by her beauty that he thought he was drunk. Lee saw that his expression had changed and again asked for a ball to be arranged. Cian rejected her once again, after which she suddenly kissed him. She used a woman's trick and convincingly said that he would host a ball. Cian was so stunned by what happened that he couldn't utter a word. He remembered how funny it was to watch her beg him. Yesterday, she couldn't control herself and was talking nonsense. At some point, he felt her gently biting into his lips with hers. The girl smiled kindly and insisted on her request again. She said she acted that way only because he was very sweet. As soon as he remembered it, he abruptly jumped up again. He liked the Empress, but he was not used to any displays of emotion. She wanted to know if he was leaving, but he couldn't utter a word due to embarrassment. He ruffled his hair and said that she needed to get rid of her drunken habits. After some time, they went to bed, where Leah lulled him to sleep again. She happily babbled into his ear, telling various stories. He watched her, surprised that she was acting so unperturbed. Leah concluded that he had started falling asleep too late. She decided to use this as an opportunity to try something new. The girl quietly lay down next to him and asked why he couldn't sleep. She decided to resort to extreme measures and touched his face. Leah smiled happily and offered to comb his hair before bed. She had heard before that gentle scalp stimulation could help one fall asleep faster. She decided to keep quiet about her motive to collect hair for the antidote. In the end, the Emperor still agreed to the adventure and sat down next to her. Leah assumed he was too focused on his own thoughts. Cian only thought about how he would be looking at her lips all night. Leah promised to delight him with new melodies if he would arrange a ball. In the end, he still agreed to the ball, just to fall asleep. The girl turned him around so his back was to her and promised it would be fun. She suddenly thought that after his story, her memories started to get confused. Despite this, she was glad that she was able to collect his hair. She was extremely curious about how many different poisons they would be able to detect. She decided to find out if he liked this comb, as she wanted to give it to him as a gift. Cian liked the idea that she had chosen it with him in mind. He tried to change the subject and asked her to tell him something else. The girl continued to comb his hair and talk about winter. Cian blushed the moment she called winter her favorite season. The next day, she faced the challenges of ball preparation. Lindo glanced at the guest list and declared that it was definitely worth all the effort. He insisted that she style the hair of the foreign ambassadors. Leah was glad that Duke Cromwell would not be attending. She thought about getting a divorce and leaving the palace after she got rid of the death threat. She didn't like official events, but she had to create the poison. The girl demanded Lindo answer if he had prepared what she asked for. He made a characteristic gesture and said that everything was perfectly prepared. 2 weeks later, Leah was finally ready for the ball. Besides her main mission, she planned to show their closeness with the Emperor. All she did was happily chatter and cling to his arm. After a brief greeting, they solemnly took their seats. Leah was behaving so unusually that the aristocrats couldn't stop whispering. They immediately began to think that the rumors about the scandalous couple were false. Leah was pleased that they had created the appropriate image. She decided to start laying the groundwork and took out her comb. Some aristocrats were surprised that she made such a gesture in public. She admitted that this comb has a calming effect. The girl was surprised by the unusual function of an ordinary object. Leah decided to let her see for herself the miraculous power of this comb. As if enchanted, she said that she truly felt clarity and peace. She immediately asked where she could buy this comb. The Empress ordered her servants to bring out a pile of identical combs. She even promised to give them a comb if they left a review. After that, many aristocrats started combing their hair. These combs were equipped with a special essence from Lindo. Thanks to this comb, she could discreetly collect hair. In addition, they could improve the essence based on feedback. Leah was happy with the success of her plan and didn't see how much it angered Cian. He didn't like that she was doing the same thing to others as she did to him. After some time, Lindo was able to develop a new antidote formula. He insisted that she take strictly 1 bottle a day. Leah looked at the box and realized that her efforts had not been in vain. She mentally praised herself for coming up with such a brilliant plan. She hid the box and noticed that Cian was noticeably late. She didn't like that he had disappeared somewhere right after the ball. She turned to Lauren and learned that he was involved in fencing training. She felt that something had happened, and she should go after him. She came to the training ground, but Cian ordered no one to be let in. As it turned out, he specifically insisted that she not be allowed in. The girl frowned in displeasure and wondered what had happened to him. Meanwhile, the Emperor was actively training to quell his fervor. Time and again, he recalled the smile with which she brushed other people's hair. He believed that all her pleasant words turned out to be nothing but empty promises. This thought infuriated him so much that he smashed the figures. He himself couldn't understand why it annoyed him so much. Leah was just thinking about how to get to the Emperor. Lauren noticed the cold weather and suggested they go back. Leah came to the conclusion that they should discuss it a little later. She walked back, thinking about drinking another bottle of antidote. The girl got ready for bed and realized that she felt somewhat uneasy. She looked at herself in the mirror and realized that she felt terrible. Besides, she noticed that this time there was a lot more blood. She thought that in that case, she had another year or 2 left. At that moment, the girl clearly didn't expect the Emperor to visit her soon. She wanted to start a conversation, but he immediately asked why she had done that. He said that at the ball, she had combed other people's hair just as she had combed his. Cian mentioned her words that she only did it for him. She tried to say that he misunderstood everything, but he refused to listen to her. He discontentedly demanded an explanation of who he was to her. The Empress was shocked by his rude behavior. She tried to quell her headache to understand the reason for his actions. The girl quickly replayed all his claims in her mind. He asked if he was nothing more to her than an empty space that needed to be appeased. Now she understood that he had simply decided that he wasn't special to her. She found this so sweet that she couldn't help but smile. She wanted to explain the reason for her smile, but blood poured from her mouth. At that moment, she realized she would have to explain herself, and trouble was inevitable. The girl tried to utter a word, but his gaze grew darker and darker. He suddenly asked if she was on the verge of death. It seemed Leah couldn't even imagine him asking her such a question. He thought she had changed her healer and become kind to him because she didn't have long to live. Chihan even thought she only had a year left to live, as he heard her words. Leah tried to say that he had misunderstood everything, but her head started spinning. She felt the ground gradually slipping away from under her feet. The Empress promised to explain everything to him, but he asked her to be silent. He was mentally angry at himself for not knowing anything about it and for talking nonsense. The man wiped the blood from the girl's mouth and asked her to remain calm. He anxiously promised that he would accept anything she wished. Leah tried to push him away, realizing there was a misunderstanding. Cian promised he would do anything to save her, as long as she didn't distance herself. Leah tried to ask him to wait, but he picked her up in his arms. He said her palace would be closed until she recovered. The girl was shocked by his statement, as she didn't want that. She tried to say that she was fine, but he swiftly carried her to the bathroom. After that, the maids washed her and put her to bed so she could rest. Leah decided to ask Cian the reason why he wanted to close her palace. The man only threatened to lock her in the bedroom if she continued to speak. He turned to her and asked her to close her eyes and rest. Cian added that it was time for her to sleep, as she looked terrible. Leah tried to fight off sleep, but the pillow was too soft. She was thinking about putting Cian to sleep, but her eyes were closing. Leah tried to say that it was time for him to sleep too, but he told her to stop being stubborn. She obeyed his will, wondering why his voice had become so soft. After some time, she opened her eyes and saw a bunch of healers. The girl immediately cautiously covered herself with a blanket and asked what had happened. As it turned out, the Emperor had locked them in the palace until she got better. A bunch of doctors immediately began asking her what was hurting her. They didn't believe that nothing was hurting her and asked her to trust them. After these words, one of the healers suggested starting the examination. Leah shouted again that she was not sick, as the situation was only getting worse. A couple of days later, she had to accept that she had been sentenced to bed rest. Lindo suggested she think of it as an opportunity to regain her strength. He said that rare medicines and foods were available to her. Leah was against it, as she really didn't feel any pain. She thought that cough with blood had greatly impressed Cien. Lindo suggested that he was so sensitive to blood because he had been on the battlefield for a long time. Leah sighed tiredly and agreed that it was possible. Lindo suggested she prepare for the antidote, but they were interrupted by the healers. He winked at her goodbye and hurried to leave her room. Lee was outraged by his behavior and the fact that he didn't try to save her. The healers immediately put her back in bed and began to fuss over her. The girl had to endure this horror until nightfall. She demanded an explanation as to why Cien wouldn't let her hear even a sound. Cien forbade him from being lulled to sleep until they found the cause of her illness. He was visibly puzzled that no one could figure out what was wrong with her. The man asked her to go to sleep as he didn't want her to cough up blood again. He touched her lip and admitted that this excitement was destroying him. He said it without thinking, but Lee blushed with embarrassment. She hurried to hide under the blanket and said that he wasn't sleeping well either. The man immediately replied that he slept well, but she refused to believe it. He looked away and admitted that without her, he really couldn't fall asleep. Leah asked him to listen to the new sound, but he just put his arm around her. The girl squeezed her eyes shut from the new sensations, not understanding how she would be able to fall asleep. Because of this, his hand felt burning hot to her, like lava. The Empress held her breath, feeling his body press against hers. She raised her head and decided to ask if he was asleep or not. She was surprised that he had learned to sleep without her help. After some time, her cousin decided to visit her. She was astonished by the news she heard from the young girl. As it turned out, rumors had spread throughout the empire because she hadn't left the palace for 2 weeks. The girl smiled and solemnly congratulated her on her first pregnancy. Leah was so shocked that she couldn't find the words. The cousin continued to rejoice that she would soon have a nephew. As it turned out, their relatives had already heard about the rumors, but Cien only granted her an audience. Leah couldn't believe that the emperor had decided to play along with this nonsense. Besides, she knew that everything would only get more complicated if her father found out about it. She involuntarily thought that Cien might have supported these rumors because of her father. Leah decided that an early-stage pregnancy could become a shield for her. Eloise started asking a lot of questions related to the future child. She smiled and remembered that the baby's gender could be known after some time. She asked for permission to sing a lullaby for her future nephew. The girl told her about a song her mother used to sing when she was pregnant. Leah heard that she herself might have heard it, and then asked her to sing it. After that, Eloise joyfully sang this touching song for her. It seemed Leah herself didn't expect the song to be so beautiful. The girl promised to draw the sheet music for her so she could sing it herself. After some time, the girl contentedly handed her a piece of paper. Leah said she would practice later because she doesn't sing very well. The girl tried in every way to postpone this moment, as she really sang terribly. Eloise stated that she should sing for her emperor to create new memories. Leah put down her cup and wondered why she was so insistent. She immediately tried to recall how well Leah sang in the novel. The girl decided to ask directly why everyone kept trying to make her sing. Eloise burst into tears and said she just wanted to be helpful to the baby. Leah thanked her for her concern and promised to practice later. She decided to calm the girl down with a conversation and praised her outfit. After some time, she decided to leave as a priest had arrived at the palace. Sebitz greeted the Empress and said that he was responsible for blessings in the temple. He asked everyone to leave as the blessing process should be pure and sacred. Leah sighed wearily, wondering when this misunderstanding would end. As soon as the priest received the girl's approval, he suggested they begin. After that, he crossed his arms, and a real miracle appeared before her eyes. Heavenly power enveloped the girl's body, and he suddenly felt a shock. Lee tried to find out what had happened to him, but he just lowered his head. He tried to bestow a blessing upon her soul, but the power reflected and did not penetrate. Lee became wary when she heard that the divine power had not accepted her. She tried to say that she had gone through the baptismal rite normally. The girl suggested that it might be related to alchemy or magic. He asked her to abandon such thoughts, as alchemy was forbidden. The late emperor forbade it after the alchemist made his prophecy. Lee thought about that very prophecy, that Shan would destroy the empire. She suggested that the late emperor might have been afraid of this confession becoming public. She needed to find out what spell her own father had cast on her. She teared up and said that she could get into trouble if anyone found out about it. The girl wanted him to keep silent about what had happened during the blessing. She decided to scare him by saying that the emperor might get very angry. He immediately said that all the alchemy specialists had died and the books had been burned. The priest admitted that he had heard of a book that miraculously remained in the Imperial Archive. Leah suggested that they would be able to find out the cause of such an incident. He was scared because the punishment applied to everyone involved in alchemy. Leah said there would be no problems if only the two of them knew about it. He continued to beg her to give up on the idea, as it could be his mistake. Leah realized that she would probably not be able to persuade this person. She involuntarily thought about lulling him to sleep with a lullaby. The girl decided to practice, even though her skills left much to be desired. She started singing and thought that she wasn't doing too badly. Leah joyfully sang the melody until she saw that he had indeed fallen asleep. The girl immediately jumped up in fright and looked at his body. Imagine her surprise when she realized that she had indeed managed to put him to sleep. She continued to stare at the priest in surprise, trying to understand what was going on. Leah involuntarily wondered about her talent for controlling sleep. She remembered that she had repeatedly managed to put the emperor to sleep. The girl thought this was a good opportunity to visit the archive. She decided not to miss such a good chance and ran to the archive. Leah carefully looked around before leaving her room. As soon as she entered the archive, its keeper's jaw dropped in surprise. Leah asked her to remain silent and allow her to choose a book herself. The woman tried to help her, but the girl insisted that she could manage on her own. After that, she suddenly ran forward and asked the woman not to worry. Soon, the girl found herself in the deepest part of the huge room. She decided to start with the most secluded places, as the book was forbidden. Leah diligently sifted through dozens of books in search of that very alchemy book. Soon, she began to wonder if its existence might indeed have been just a rumor. She decided to end her search, as she had very little time left. Leah decided to grab a novel for entertainment, so she wouldn't leave empty-handed. She randomly pulled out an unusual book that stood out from the rest. The girl quickly scanned its contents, which brought a blush to her cheeks. She was shocked by the inappropriate content of the romance novel. Soon, Leah discovered that she had accidentally cut her finger on the edge of the book. As soon as a drop of blood touched the paper, its pages began to glow. It seemed this book had been deliberately encrypted to hide it from prying eyes. A couple of seconds later, the girl realized that the book had taken on a different appearance. Leah noticed that its title had changed and decided to check its contents. She noticed that one of the spreads contained a rule. This led her to believe that she had found the very book she was looking for. The girl was so happy that she didn't immediately realize her time was up. Leah ran into the reading room and ordered them not to follow her. As soon as she threatened to send them to the harem, they immediately froze in place. After that, the girl ran off to a secluded corner and made sure she was alone. She decided to carefully review the special oath once more. What alarmed her was that after the oath, the pages were blank. She thought she should once again shed a drop of blood on the page. The girl touched the thorn of a rose, then brought her finger to the page. After that, a question appeared on the page asking what she wished to know. She spoke to the book as if it were a friend and asked what it knew about magic. Leah didn't see any answer and decided that the question should be written down. She decided to briefly describe her symptoms that had tormented her before. The book replied that this spell was cast on the first day of life and was intertwined with destiny. Leah became even more convinced that the Duke was the culprit. The book replied that her soul was now bound to the person closest to her. She recalled that in novels, people died simultaneously if their souls were connected. Leah decided to ask what would happen to the bound person if she died. The book replied that, over time, the spell would bind the soul more and more tightly. Ultimately, this would lead to both souls ending up on the same path of destiny. Now Leah understood the reason why Cian died after her death. The girl was shocked by such horrifying information. Meanwhile, Lauren had just discovered that the door to the room was open. She wanted to ask the priest if they had finished the dedication ceremony. Imagine her surprise when she saw him lying on the floor. The woman was horrified to discover that the Empress had disappeared. They immediately woke the priest and thought he had taken the medicine. As soon as Lauren heard this guess, a new thought appeared in her head. All the servants shut their mouths in fear that the Empress might have been kidnapped. Meanwhile, the girl wondered if the killer knew about this secret. By killing the Empress, they were able to open the way to destroy the Emperor. This only further convinced her that her father was to blame for everything. She decided to start by figuring out what was definitely known. Leah hoped that if she was okay, then Cian would be okay too. However, she was not prepared to put up with his overprotective behavior. She decided that she should put this matter aside and move on to another. Seeing the change, she concluded that the blood needed to be renewed. Next, she wanted to know why the spell was so painful. The book replied that forcibly bound souls were trying to merge. She wouldn't be able to break the spell until one of the souls disappeared. Leah was unhappy that she had no other options to solve this problem. She wanted to know how they could accelerate the merger. The girl wrote a new question and involuntarily imagined the infinity symbol. The book answered that it was possible through emotions, touch, and the body. She added that the choice was hers before returning to her primary form. Leah demanded a full explanation and started banging a book on the table. She tried to collect a little more blood, but all the thorns were dull. The girl began frantically inventing ways to get blood. She was so engrossed in this question that she didn't immediately notice the figure nearby. The Duke furiously grabbed her shoulders and asked if she had gone mad. He asked if it had been so unpleasant that she ran away. The Emperor demanded an answer to why she had taken such a step. She protested, saying that there were reasons for it. He sarcastically suggested that she would start lying about how she wanted to read the book alone. Cian found it hard to believe that she had put the priest to sleep and escaped for this. Leah didn't want to risk her life and be executed for reading the book. Cian pierced her with his furious gaze and asked what kind of book it was. What was his surprise when he saw the indecent pictures? This sight turned out to be so astonishing that his ardor disappeared somewhere. He told her to tell him everything if she wanted to watch. Leah tried to justify herself, saying that she doesn't read such books at all. Sean sadly said that he wouldn't forgive her if she continued to hurt herself. Lee touched his chest and asked if his heart ached from sadness. She was struck by the fact that he was willing to take on her pain. The girl looked at her wound and said that it was more like worry and distress. She understood that there was room in his heart for anger because of her escape. She smiled and asked him to say kindly that it hurt him to see her wounded. Cian was touched by her words and apologized for scaring her. The girl smiled and said that he was not a tyrant, but a kind person. She said that all those words about the Emperor with emotions made no sense. Lee stroked his head and said that the Empire had not collapsed. Cian remained silent, but his reddened ears betrayed his feelings. He suddenly frowned and said that he was not going to turn a blind eye to her escape. The Emperor threw her over his shoulder and called her a true mischief maker. Leah tried to ask him to pick up the book before they left. She joyfully thanked him for fulfilling her request. After a short pause, he said he didn't even understand how she had held back all this time. He added that withdrawal symptoms were to be expected after she got rid of the harem. Cian promised to pretend he knew nothing so she could read whatever she wanted. As soon as they returned, the priest began to beg for forgiveness. Leah said everything was fine and asked how he was feeling. He said he was fine and could continue the blessing. Leah immediately tried to stop him so the Emperor wouldn't find out the truth. The next moment, she saw golden energy enveloping her body. The priest smiled, crossed his arms, and recited a prayer. Leah tried to explain it by saying that the first time, everything went wrong due to nervousness. The priest lowered his gaze and said that he didn't remember anything after losing consciousness. Leah wondered to herself if he had forgotten everything they had discussed. Cian said he would lift the restrictions if she regularly underwent treatment. Leah demanded that he also undergo regular treatment. He replied in surprise that she was still making excuses. Leah frowned and said that he might be in a condition that required treatment. In addition, she demanded that the rumor about her pregnancy be addressed. She understood that they could stop the Duke, but she didn't want to be considered a liar. Cian believed that everything would resolve itself if she didn't have a child. The girl hid her book under the pillow and protested. Her gaze unexpectedly fell upon the table, where a sheet of music lay. Cian suggested they might have been lost during cleaning. The girl explained that she had received them as a gift from Eloise. Cian told her to forget about it and get some good rest. After waking up, she continued to ponder the answers she had received from the book for a long time. She decided to discuss them with Lindo to reach a new conclusion. Lindo suggested that the Emperor's soul was also susceptible to his emotions. Leah assumed that the curse wouldn't hurt her if things continued this way. She decided that she should regularly exchange emotions with Cian. Lindo was still puzzled that the priest had forgotten everything that had happened. Leah exhaled and said that it played into their hands, as the book could have been revealed. During the experiment, they found that the book only reacted to her blood. She was still bothered by the fact that the book had such a lewd disguise. Meanwhile, their main enemies were discussing that the Emperor might have suspected something. An unknown woman with a smile said that one of the two of them might already be dead. The man took a sip and said that they would have to influence the Emperor. He meaningfully stated that blood always entails blood. The next day, Leah was finally able to walk outside the palace. She was delighted by the fresh air and the beauty of nature. Leah was especially happy that the day of the hunting tournament had arrived. Cian tried to stop her, but she promised to stay close to him. She snuggled up to his arm and asked if he was glad he had brought her along. He was surprised that she continued to be happy about everything. Cian asked if she had seen the list of participants sent to her chambers. Leah concealed the fact that she had been spitting blood yesterday due to the universal antidote. She decided to find out why he was more tense than usual today. To her regret, they had to pause for a man who appeared. He respectfully introduced himself as the heir Cedric Sylvester. Shihan said that now he understood why she was in such a good mood. He leaned in and said that this was her fiancé, to whom she had been promised before birth. Leah had no idea that such a turn of events would occur in her life. She thoughtfully examined the one she had been betrothed to since infancy. She finally remembered that he was the heir to the neighboring duchy. Before her birth, the Duke had hoped for a son, so he could take a daughter from the duchy as a daughter-in-law. That's why he arranged the engagement after his wife became pregnant. At that time, the Queen was also expecting a child and agreed to such cooperation. Soon, everything became irrelevant, as they had a son, and the Celeste family had a daughter. Leah thought about how this world lacked special technologies. She vaguely remembered that they had been somewhat close in childhood. The girl involuntarily compared him to a friend and greeted him. The heir confessed that he hadn't been able to visit her for several years due to state affairs. She wanted to answer the question of how she was doing, but she was interrupted. Cian jokingly noted his dedication to strengthening the friendship between their countries. Leah wondered if the two-day tournament would be tiring. Cedric asked for a master class, but Cian replied that he would be busy taking care of the Empress. After that, he led her away so quickly that she didn't even have time to squeak. She asked, bewildered, if he was going to take care of her. The girl got on the horse and asked if he hated Cedric. She wanted to know why he had so abruptly ended the conversation, referring to her. He unhappily asked if she really wanted to keep standing with her fiancé. The girl refused and reminded him that this agreement had been terminated long ago. The Emperor continued to grumble discontentedly, showing his jealousy. Leah said that she had no contact with Cedric, but he again found something to complain about. He didn't like her calling him by his first name so frivolously. They had to stop talking because the tournament was starting. The Empress had to rest due to back pain after a long ride. She heard a signal indicating the presence of high-grade prey. As soon as she looked ahead, she saw a huge animal. A fierce black bull with enormous horns was rapidly running towards them. The guards immediately shouted that a chimera was approaching them. This huge bull effortlessly tossed one guy aside. The remaining guards ordered a signal flare to be launched. Meanwhile, the bull was so enraged that saliva dripped from its mouth. They were surprised, as chimeras were forbidden for combat use. The guard understood his chances were slim, but he still protected the Empress. At some point, the chimera sped up and was right next to the Empress. The girl thought they would all die and fearfully covered her face with her hand. Luckily for her, Xian managed to appear at the last moment and protect her. She wanted to make sure he was all right, but her path was blocked. Cedric said that the Emperor had changed and attacked him after he was wounded. Leah couldn't believe that he had actually attacked someone. She looked at his face and saw that his eyes were clouded over. The position of his body immediately suggested the presence of something predatory. Cedric suggested that the sight of blood awakened his instincts. It seemed Leah hadn't considered how many wars he had fought. She thought he wasn't in a state to lose control right now. Leah immediately suspected there was something fishy about it. She asked Cedric to stop and said that he was not that kind of person. To her surprise, he replied that he must protect her as long as their engagement remained valid. He said Eloise would be upset if she didn't come to the wedding. An arrow somehow flew past her, grazing her cheek. Besides that, she felt a strange aroma for a moment. After a brief analysis, she concluded that she had been poisoned. The girl instantly recognized the poison as alcetamine, which Lindo had given her. It wasn't the strongest, but its symptoms were difficult to identify. The consequences could have been severe, even leading to death if help wasn't provided. Despite long preparation, blood still flowed from her mouth. The Emperor immediately lunged forward, but Cedric protected her. As soon as he approached, Leah smelled the fuse of alcetamine. She couldn't understand why she felt it from Cedric. Meanwhile, the Emperor continued to attack the air. At some point, he managed to graze his cheek, from which blood gushed. Leah continued to analyze her husband's strange behavior. She suggested that someone had deliberately caused this situation. The girl was not ready to forgive this, considering how much effort she had put in. She felt hurt for her efforts, which she had invested for so long. That's why she felt not fear, but a desire to stop it. She frantically tried to figure out how to get out of this situation. She decided to try and create the connection that was mentioned in the book. Leah rushed forward without hesitation and ordered them to get out of the way. She swiftly grabbed the Emperor by the collar and kissed him. The kiss was so deep that his consciousness cleared. It seemed Xian was slowly coming to his senses and lowered his weapon. At one point, he even placed his hand on her waist and deepened the kiss. Leah saw that help had arrived, but he didn't want to stop. She had to hit him on the forehead before everyone started spreading rumors about her. The blow was so strong that their foreheads went numb with pain. After that, the Emperor fell to the ground like a heavy log. Leah was outraged that he had passed out, leaving her alone with the problem. He was examined, and they concluded that he was fine. Leah smiled awkwardly and said that she was perfectly fine. She glanced at Xian and wondered what had caused such a state. The girl turned to the head of the knights and asked what had happened in the hunting grounds. All this time, he was hunting with the heir to the Duchy of Sylvester. After that, a chimera suddenly appeared and a mass slaughter began. Cedric was wounded, and the arrow he shot hit a tree. It ricocheted off the Emperor's arm, causing bleeding. They suggested that his military past caused this condition. Leah thought less superficially and knew there was something strange about it. She immediately connected it with what she had heard from Cedric. The girl turned to Cedric and recalled that he had spoken of an attack. From his expression, she understood that one of them was definitely lying. Cedric began to say that she had confused something due to fear. Leah clearly realized that he was acting very convincingly. She brushed Cedric's hand from her face and said that the arrow shot at her was poisoned. The girl explained that she felt a strange smell and a burning pain. Cedric tried to justify himself by saying that the confusion in her thoughts was caused by the poison. He asked to escort her to a doctor, but she said there was no need for that. She recalled that she had been carefully monitoring her health lately. Leah explained that such a weak poison had no effect on her. Cedric gritted his teeth and suggested that he misspoke due to confusion. He began to say that the Emperor had raised his sword against him, even though he was innocent. Leah squeezed his hands and declared that she considered him a suspect. She deliberately bit his palm to confirm her guess. After that, blood flowed from her mouth again, as if after taking poison. The guards immediately gasped in surprise at the sight of blood. Leah stated that there was indeed poison on his gloves. She ordered the guards to seize him immediately. Cedric tried to justify himself, saying that there was a substance on his gloves that was used in the duchy. The Empress saw no point in listening to him further and ordered him to be taken away. She was glad that silence reigned after that. Leah perfectly understood that he was in league with the one who shot the arrow. She assumed they had dragged the Chimera there to cause a massacre. Then they arranged for him to be wounded by an arrow, thinking he would go berserk. After that, they lied to her, saying that Sion himself had attacked them first. They wanted to blame her death on a crazed Sion. If she had died, the soul-binding ritual would have worked, and he would have died. She had to find out why he reacted so violently to blood. The girl thought about that incident at the coronation. She concluded that he genuinely hated blood and slaughter. It seemed strange to her that he would become frantic at the sight of blood. The guard reported to her about the temporary suspension of the hunting tournament. The Empress wanted to say something, but her head suddenly spun. She lost consciousness, but the man managed to catch her before she fell to the ground. The girl concluded that her body couldn't handle it after contact with the poison. Eventually, she opened her eyes in a carriage next to her husband. She immediately rejoiced that he was all right and safe. The girl mentally compared him to a black panther that needed supervision. As soon as he saw her face, he abruptly stood up. He saw that the girl had lost consciousness again and shouted her name. After this incident, the girl woke up in her own bed. Sion constantly asked if they had managed to remove the poison from her body. Lindo tried to reassure him that she would be fine soon. In addition, he said that the same poison was on Cedric's gloves and the arrow. Sion was ready to tear Cedric apart for encroaching on her health. He left, ordering them to ensure not a single hair on the Empress's head was harmed. He remembered nothing from the moment the arrow hit him. Sion felt ashamed that this fragile woman had decided everything herself. This was already enough for him to want to get back at Cedric. He opened the door and saw that this guy was already chained to a chair. With each passing second, the desire for revenge boiled stronger within him. He grabbed Cedric by the collar and ordered him to state his purpose. The head of state promised that he would sentence his son to life imprisonment. This way, he wanted to maintain diplomatic relations. It soon became clear that his son had secretly funded illegal chimera experiments. As a sign of reconciliation, they were ready to cede the North Sea and break off the engagement. In addition, underwater fuel was found in the North Sea. Sion tore up the letter and was surprised at how they were trying to save Cedric's worthless life. He threw away the letter and ordered the Northern Sea to be renamed the Empress Sea. The messenger saw the Emperor's gaze and promised to immediately notify the Maritime League. In addition, he ordered the castration of the ducal heir, Sylvester. The messenger was shocked by such a disrespectful decision. The Emperor drew his sword and insisted that it be done without objection. A moment later, he was informed that the Empress had regained consciousness. He ordered the matter to be dealt with and hurried to his wife. Sion wondered for a long time why she had been unconscious for 3 days. He couldn't get over his anger at how his wife had been treated. All these days, he had been looking into all the details of this case. He found out that Sylvester wanted to sell chimeras all over the continent. That's why he chose the hunting grounds for smuggling. They decided to use the Emperor to pin all the blame on him. Sylvester laughed and said that the Empress had caught them. Chihan grabbed him by the collar again and ordered him not to dare utter her name. He clenched his fist and vowed that the duchy would not go unpunished. Sion promised that he would pay for the rest of his life for involving Leah in this. The guard informed the Empress that the Emperor had arrived in her chambers. Sion was surprised to see the door immediately close again. He immediately sensed something was wrong, but Leah ordered him to get out. She demanded an explanation of how she was supposed to live with this shame now. The girl was angry at him for kissing her so obscenely in front of everyone. She called him a pervert and said that he dared to humiliate her in front of everyone. At first, he didn't understand what she was talking about until he remembered that kiss. In a state of unconsciousness, he himself didn't realize how his hand ended up on her waist. Due to the enormous burden of problems, he had forgotten what had happened. The Emperor blushed deeply and began to argue that he hadn't done it on purpose. He asked her to wait and just open the door so he could explain everything. The healers stopped him, saying that his intrusion would affect the Empress's condition. They continued to hold the Emperor back to avoid stress. Leah covered herself with a blanket and said she didn't know how to look people in the eye. She was offended because she had just gotten rid of her image as a scandalous empress. The girl cried, thinking that this was too much even for a husband and wife. Leah accidentally stated that such things should happen when they are alone. As soon as she thought about it, she immediately began to dismiss such thoughts. The next day, she tried in every way to avoid the Emperor's attention. She said she wanted to take a walk, but he continued to follow her. She instantly changed her plans, but he immediately adapted to them. Leah ran up the stairs, but accidentally stumbled and ended up in his arms. He wanted to lead her to the room, but she recoiled and said she didn't need it. After that, she broke free from his embrace and ran away as fast as she could. She burst into her room and slid down, feeling deeply embarrassed. Lindo decided to find out why she was avoiding the Emperor. He was in her room to give her a research report. After that, he again tried to find out the reason for such behavior. The girl darkened and asked if he could kiss in front of the whole world. Lindo said he saw nothing in it that would brand him a pervert. He was amused that she was truly so embarrassed by this incident. All this time, he thought she truly knew no shame. She had already announced that her pregnancy was a lie, but no one believed her. He exhaled tiredly and supposed that she was simply embarrassed by the Emperor's attention. Leah only got angrier and said that wasn't the point. This topic was so sensitive that she didn't know how to go on living. She was afraid that everyone would continue to whisper at the reception. She was bothered by the fact that her plan for a divorce in 2 years was slowly going to hell. Lindo turned away, thinking that he didn't want to get involved in his superior's affairs. A couple of days later, the day of the grand event arrived. All these days, Sion tried somehow to get the Empress's attention. Leah blushed and asked what exactly he had done wrong. He replied that he didn't really remember anything, but that only made her angrier. She reminded him again how he had disgraced her in front of everyone. Leah stated that she just wanted to calm him down and didn't want to do it so passionately. She was outraged that he felt no shame, and she was the one who had to deal with all the consequences. The girl decided to keep quiet about it being her first kiss. She wanted to ask him not to cross the line, but he only offered to help her get revenge. He thought she would want to take her anger out on him, but he was wrong. Sion seductively whispered that he wanted to help her blow off some steam. Meanwhile, the audience cheered, looking at their romantic figures. He said that this time he should be ashamed, so that everything would be fair. Sion gently squeezed her wrist and asked if she wanted to hit him. Leah thought he wanted to fake a kiss so she would slap him. She was deeply struck by the fact that he was willing to let himself be disgraced. She playfully touched him with her finger and asked if that would be enough. Sion frowned, trying to understand what the girl was getting at. Leah got the reaction she wanted and contentedly patted his head. The public immediately declared that the Emperor could not contradict the Empress. They enjoyed watching the Emperor's embarrassed face. As soon as she lowered her hand, he asked if she felt better. Leah smiled joyfully and said that she really did feel better. After that, they stepped forward and greeted their people. Next on the agenda, the Empress was to host a tea party. Leah met Eloise before heading to the aristocrats. They exchanged polite greetings and inquired about each other's well-being. Eloise confessed how glad she was that she didn't have to get married. Leah supported her in this and said that there are still many worthy people in the world. Eloise unexpectedly confessed that she had taken a liking to Duchess Shire. She said that the Duchess had recently gotten married, and they turned out to have similar interests. Eloise asked her to help her sit next to the Duchess of Shire. The Empress said it wouldn't be difficult and promised to help her. Eloise got carried away in conversation with the Duchess and offered her favorite madeleines. The Empress watched their friendly conversation intently. She was able to see Duchess Shire in all her glory for the first time. Eloise kept offering her favorite buns. Leah noticed that she was stuffing the girl with so much flour-based food. She decided to ignore the situation and cheer herself up with conversation. Soon, Eloise saw that the Duchess's condition had worsened. The girl forced a smile and said that she had simply eaten a little too much. Eloise immediately offered her a remedy that aids digestion. The other ladies were pleasantly surprised by her attentiveness. Duchess Shire smiled joyfully and thanked them for their concern. The Empress felt relieved and decided to get to the main point. She said that she really enjoyed spending time with the ladies. One of the girls suggested having a tea party at the country residence. Leah smiled and said she would ask His Majesty for permission. She thought that even the most fastidious ladies would come to such a tea party. She had to establish connections with influential ladies to collect more hair. Besides that, she wanted to find out where she could earn some extra money. She turned around and saw that the Duchess had decided to leave. Leah immediately noticed that the girl's face had turned sickly white. She assumed that Eloise hadn't noticed it because she was busy talking. The Empress concluded that the Duchess preferred to suffer alone. She had to leave to offer her help. She offered to call a doctor, but the girl insisted on light rest. Leah smiled and said she knew a way to recover faster. She turned to Lauren to ask her to fulfill her request. A couple of minutes later, the maid returned with a small box in her hands. Leah took out the needle and made sure it had been disinfected. She playfully winked at the frightened girl and asked her to trust her. This method had no scientific basis, but it was very helpful for stomach pains. She asked me to close my eyes for a minute to calm down. Duchess Charles was frightened when she saw that her blood was a strange color. This sight struck her so much that she immediately jumped up from her seat. Despite the fear, she really did feel better after some time. The Empress smiled and mysteriously alluded to a family secret. After that, they returned, and Eloise apologized for having imposed the treats. The Duchess ignored Eloise and invited Leah to her place as a thank you. The girl froze to the side, feeling like a third wheel. After this tea party, Leah was still thinking about what to do with Sion's rage. She knew he was sensitive to blood, but she didn't know he could lose his mind. She told Lindo that he hadn't reacted to her blood at all. However, during the hunt, he lost his mind at the sight of someone else's blood. She suggested that it was his rage that was described in the prophecy. Lindo suggested asking the Red Book about it. He gently offered to prick her finger, but she immediately refused. The girl opened the book, after which it immediately spoke to her. A suggestion appeared on the page, offering her to subdue him with her power. Leah didn't quite understand what was meant by the word quote, _0___. The book mysteriously added that today she had brought some kind of energy with her. The Empress was puzzled that the book always spoke in roundabout phrases. After another bloodstain on the page, the Duchess's necklace was mentioned. Lindo recalled rumors that it was a family heirloom of the Shire family. Leah immediately remembered that very ruby necklace on the girl's neck. She couldn't understand how she would be able to retrieve her family jewel. The book said that there are stones that can amplify each other. Leah closed the book and decided she should go to Dukeshire's estate. Lindo said she should sleep separately from the Emperor until the rumors disappear. He linked this to the fact that she would soon be coughing up blood more often. Besides that, he handed her the new antidote he had made. Leah herself understood that Cian might become even more obsessively caring towards her. During tea, Kybal Helios decided to greet the Emperor. He was the second prince of Queen Helios, whose kingdom was founded by descendants of the Bermut family. The Emperor recalled that he had allowed him not to appear in person with greetings. Helios brazenly poured tea into a cup and said that he wanted to be the first to congratulate him on his wedding. They often saw each other as children, but Sienna's nonchalance always annoyed him. As soon as he hinted at his sister, Cian immediately told him to give up the idea of an empress. The boy smiled and said that now she would have a friend to brighten up her palace life. He said he could be Leah's friend himself if she didn't like his sister. These words angered Cian so much that he broke the quill in half. He declared that the Empress would not be lonely even without such friends. Helios smiled and said that they were now enjoying the sweetest period of their marriage. Cian blushed and asked why he decided to bring that up. It seemed Helios enjoyed provoking him into showing emotions. As soon as he got what he wanted, he immediately decided to leave. Before closing the door, he hoped for a quick meeting with the Empress. After that, he closed the door and doubled over with laughter. It seemed the spectacle he had witnessed gave him considerable pleasure. He was amazed that such a cold person was capable of emotions. Helios was glad that he had a reason to tease him. After some time, the Empress prepared for bed and saw a rose. She thoughtfully twirled the rose in her hand and thought that Cian had left it. The servant explained that this rose was Helios's landmark. Leah mentally noted the giver's good taste and asked for it to be placed in a vase. After that, she decided to hide the antidote as quickly as possible. Lauren returned to the room and praised her for how successfully she had handled things. Leah lay down in bed and thought about how she would put Cian to sleep. The girl tried in every way to fight off sleep, but only fell asleep more deeply. After some time, Cian finally appeared in the room. Leah admitted that she deliberately wanted to wait until he fell asleep. The man said that he didn't need to be put to sleep and then covered her with a blanket. Leah said that from now on, they would sleep separately 4 times a week. She attributed this to the fact that he himself had started sleeping soundly. Besides, she wanted to test his ability to fall asleep alone. She was extremely alarmed by his sudden and meaningful silence. He exhaled tiredly before asking her a new, troubling question. What was his surprise when he found a single rose in the vase? He directly asked what a rose from Helios was doing in their room. The Empress calmly called it beautiful and said it was a gift. As soon as she said that, he abruptly jumped out of bed again. He was displeased that this rose was on her nightstand. Cian continued to greedily examine her with his eyes, seeing a challenge in her. He especially disliked that she considered the flower beautiful. Leah smiled serenely and said that she had never seen such beautiful roses. Cian thoughtfully touched her hair and silently cursed that guy. This situation annoyed him so much that he could barely contain his anger. The next day, the girl decided to visit the Duchess. The Empress recalled that Duke Shire's estate was famous for its garden. The Duchess agreed and thanked her for the help. She wanted to thank the Empress and asked what she would like. Leah immediately thought that this was the perfect moment to mention the necklace. She was forced to be silent as Eloise met her. The girl said that she had also asked to be invited to the meeting. This saddened Leah, as she wouldn't be able to ask about the necklace. She had to wait for the moment when they could be alone. She decided to find out where the tea came from, but Eloise accidentally knocked over the mug. Eloise apologized, as the Duchess's dress was soaked. Leah saw an opportunity in this, as the girl offered her a change of clothes. She immediately and happily agreed to the offer to change her dress. Duchess Shire admitted that she gives the impression of being a kind person. The girl smiled and said that she is always kind and cares for everyone. In addition, she stated that the Empress is incredibly beautiful. Leah blushed with embarrassment and involuntarily compared her to a hamster. She was so kind that even the Empress wanted to befriend her. Duchess Shire admitted that she liked her the most. Leah smiled and joyfully suggested they become friends. The girl agreed and offered to go shopping to buy her a gift. The Empress modestly replied that her attention would be enough for her. She decided to casually ask where her ruby necklace came from. The Duchess replied that it was a family heirloom passed down through generations. Leah thoughtfully said that she would like to buy something similar for herself. Duchess Shire saw the sparkle in her eyes and felt a pang of remorse. She said she knew a place where a similar stone could be bought. The girl gently clasped the Empress's hands and promised to contact her. Leah was secretly glad that she knew where to look for another stone. Her joy knew no bounds when the Empress called her by name. Leah happily thought that everything was going smoothly. She accidentally noticed that Eloise was standing next to her cup. The Empress looked closer and saw that she had taken out some kind of vial. She immediately felt anxious and started recalling Eloise's behavior. The girl made sure that the Duchess hadn't noticed anything. After that, they returned to where Eloise met them. She smiled awkwardly and said that it all happened because of her mistake. Eloise added that she had poured the tea in advance so it wouldn't be hot. As soon as they sat down at the table, the Empress deliberately stepped on the girl's foot. She took advantage of the confusion and discreetly swapped their cups. Leah feigned distress and apologized for the accidental bump. She gave an awkward smile and promised to be more careful next time. Eloise took a sip of tea and noted that it had a pleasant taste. She smiled and offered the drink to the Empress to try. Leah wanted to quickly see the effect of the medicine she had mixed in. A few minutes later, Eloise felt a strange heaviness in her body. She looked away and said that her stomach was a little upset. Her face instantly turned pale, which only frightened everyone around her even more. The Duchess offered to try a remedy for stomach pain, but Eloise screamed. After that, she suddenly jumped up and ran away. The girl immediately began to worry about what had happened to Eloise. Leah concluded that Eloise had used a simple laxative. She tried to understand why she wanted to give her a laxative. After some time, the Empress decided to return to the palace. Duchess Shire sincerely thanked her for her concern. Leah smiled innocently and said that they were now friends. She added that it is natural for friends to rely on each other. The Empress said that they could call each other by their first names when they were alone. The girl was delighted by such a display of kindness. They turned around and saw Ruby's brother approaching them. The Empress saw this red-haired guy, who had left the rose, for the first time. Ruby immediately smiled and introduced them to each other. Kybal Helios kissed the Empress's hand and introduced himself as the second son. She was surprised that he unexpectedly asked if she liked the flowers. He explained that he had presented them as a gift, for which Leah thanked him. Kybal said that he still had many roses, and she could contact him. After these words, they wished her a happy journey home. Leah smiled back at them and added that they would see each other again. She was glad that she would be able to extract information about the special stone. The girl looked at the castle and thought about Eloise's suspicious nature. She remembered how at the tea party, she had practically forced Ruby to eat. After that, she gave her a digestive aid, as if it had all been planned. She supposed that the girl might have been jealous of her and Ruby. She was bothered by the fact that Eloise might have other intentions. For a long time, she kept thinking about what her cousin was really up to. The next day, she discovered new flowers in the palace. She had never before seen decorations in the center of the table. Cian proudly watched the girl's reaction to the prepared flowers. Imagine his surprise when she suggested they were edible. The Empress attributed this to seeing flowers on a table for the first time. Cian replied that this was not the case and told her to put them in her room. Leah thanked him for his thoughtfulness and noticed how pleased he was. She decided to tease him and called roses the best flowers. After that, she added that his gift was much more valuable. The Empress declared that she would leave these flowers on the table and put the roses by her bed. As soon as she finished speaking, he angrily bent the fork in his hand. As soon as she returned to the room, a vase of flowers was already on her table. She happily noticed that Ruby had sent her a letter. The Empress was pleasantly surprised by the girl's determination. In it, she wrote that she had organized a meeting where she could obtain the stone. The girl immediately assumed that other aristocrats would be at this meeting. Leah saw this as an opportunity to meet influential figures of high society. She began writing a reply letter and thinking about how to get closer to them. The Empress began to ponder how her outfit should be impeccable. She tried to figure out which outfit would help convey her mood. Soon, she finally came to a conclusion about what her dress should be like. After that, she called Lauren to give a new order. She ordered all the ladies-in-waiting to be gathered immediately to choose the best outfit. At that moment, she clearly didn't expect to receive a humiliating refusal. Before, luck had always been on her side, but this